morning, friends and gamers on the interwebs. I'm Rachael Blaske, and
I'm Julie Ahern.
And this is episode 6. 6 weeks we've been doing this.
Mm-hmm.
And in this episode of You're Invited, Julie, and I'm going to, hey, I did it right. You're over here. Julie, VP and COO of Greenbrier Games, and myself, owner of Poketto, will chat over a good cup of coffee, which I haven't even had a chance to take a sip of yet.
Yeah.
Talking,
cheers.
I know I kind of want to do that. Cheers, babe. Oh. And we're talking about tabletop industry news and a topic that we feel is important in running a board game company. And all the while, we're going to check in on your comments and the questions that you have in the live chat because you're invited.
Good morning. So, how are you? It's been hectic today, huh?
It has.
And there's a reason for that because of what we're talking today. But before we get into that, this episode is brought to you by Arcane Wonders, who are launching their Kickstarter for Freedom 5, a Sentinels comic board game on October 20th. So this upcoming week, this newest good board game in the Sentinels of the Multiverse and Defenders of the Realm game series.
Yes. And we actually have a new little thing I want to tell you guys that did you know that we are actually asking questions on Insta and Facebook every Monday? We give you a chance to win a game. And last week, Allison Burrell from Kidsplaining, she's in the comments this morning, she won Tales of Barbaria. And right now you have one more chance to enter by sharing this stream right now. Any shares in the first 5 minutes will have another entry to win. And this week it is Hello Secret Neighbor from Arcane Wonders.
Yeah, and Hello Neighbor, the Secret Neighbor party game is for 5 to 10 players, and they do have a PDF downloadable that shows you how you can play it online using, so safe social distancing with friends in other areas and still play the game as a social deduction game.
I love that they are taking into account the current situation. That's really awesome.
Right.
So, got some tabletop news coming at you this morning.
Oh, we do.
Oh, we got some good stuff. Let me pull that up.
It's been another big week. I mean, they just keep coming, don't they? So all the news. Well, the top 2 news items we are going to talk about first, the Brexit shipping changes. So, I mean, on the one hand, this has been being discussed. I can remember the first time really talking about it 3 Essens ago. So, I mean, this has been an ongoing thing, but it was voted and now it's finally happening. So the tricky part about it is so if you think about it, so you're getting shipped taxes, VAT charges for freight shipping into and out of the country. Those are 2 different things. So something to be aware of if you're going to look at it, and we do have a link to what the UK government has as their publication of what they're doing. But if you want additional information, it's actually kind of hard to come by right now. So what they're saying is January 1st, VAT charges are happening and going into effect. And if you're shipping into the UK, whether if it's for retail or Kickstarters, they believe, not certain yet because they're not sure how it's actually going to be worded because they don't actually have the laws in effect for specific guidelines, will be charged that additional VAT tax. And that if you are a publisher, you can't just go through your logistics shipping people to handle the VAT for you. You will have to do it yourself. So
more paperwork.
Definitely more paperwork. I would say to be on the safe side because there's still a level of uncertainty of when, where, how. It's still better. We've been looking into it, and when I say we, I mean our lovely accountant, who's delightful, is looking into the paperwork for that because that is not my strength.
That's the less I math, the better it is for everyone.
So is looking into the paperwork for getting it up and running, because it is for, I mean, for retail, it's been this way for a while. If you're selling in another country, they expect you to pay the additional taxes for that country.
That's fair.
Right. Well, fair, not fair. What we can talk about global economy, but I'd rather not, because that's a
not
whole
today.
different episode.
Not after this week.
And I'm dressed like this. So,
that's credibility right there.
Right.
You can talk to Beetlejuice about the global economy.
Global economy, yeah, that's a thing. I'm not going to do.
Oh, I love it.
So, however, Kickstarter has been getting a pass historically because it's a crowdfunding. It's treated as not the same thing. They're starting to look at it more critically. However, they haven't determined to what degree. Now, going into the country is one, going out of the country is another, and leaving the country isn't going into effect until the middle of the year, and they still don't know what that looks like. So you might be paying a VAT charge for shipping to the UK, and then potentially having to pay another VAT charge if that's your hub and you're trying to ship to the rest of Europe at that point. But it hasn't gone into effect, and it's not going to for a couple more months. They don't know what that looks like. There may be a delay because some of the Kickstarters that have already funded and shipping has already been planned, and your boat is already, on its way. There may be a slight grandfather clause period where you don't have to because your Kickstarter, but they haven't determined whether it's the boats on the water, manufacturing's already happened, or the date that your Kickstarter funded. None of that has been specified. So it's still a lot of areas of uncertainty. Keep an eye on it. Talk to your logistics partners. Make sure you have an accountant that you can rely on.
Yes.
And keep reading the news, friends. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is that Gamma has, just released. I actually would like
Major announcement.
If you would talk about this one, because I feel like I'm a little too close to it. So maybe you.
Well, okay. So I didn't read a whole lot into it. I've been hearing the rumblings for quite some time, so you can clarify. Basically, Gamma's had a rough year, and they're trying to really become responsive to their membership and the overall gaming community. And one of the ways that they are doing that is they are trying to restructure their membership so that voting privileges and different ways that you can interact with the organization is almost like an a la carte kind of get what you need out of them instead of just getting things that you don't really feel like you need or, could utilize differently. So when they started looking into this, they evaluated a lot of different types of memberships, like through like city council type things or like just different ways to look at the situation. And it sounds like they have come to an agreement, and somebody who's an amazing advocate and writer that might be on this show had a hand in writing these. So it's good. So tell me what is the real basic, because we're gonna power through today, but what are the levels that they are announcing?
So it's not so much that so you're saying a la carte. We had talked about that, but what it is instead talking about having an even playing field.
Okay.
So right now, historically, Gamma has been a publisher's. It started as a publishers group, organization. Slowly, they've incorporated some or started to incorporate, but not full members, distribution and retailers. They started looking at manufacturing, but then now and a long time now, there has been advocacy for designers, for media, for all different parts. Yeah, I said that.
You get every pass available this week.
Thanks. All the different careers that go together to make the board game industry. So that is what we're looking at, is that instead of having these different tiers per se, having a structure where we vote in members and you can go to your looking for the word, your guild, your group. I'm not sure what we've decided it's going to be called, but so if you are media, you would be part of that group.
I
And
think
if you're
that
a publisher,
you should
you go to
call
that
it
group.
an adventuring party.
Yes, your adventuring party.
I think that would be thematically happy for me.
And so we're announcing that we're doing this. It's going to take some time because we're looking, because it's not, each adventuring party would not be the same.
That's a thing.
Yeah,
Now.
I'm doing it now. Of course, they're going to yell at me because they're going to be like, it's not being called that, Julie. But it's
One voice.
Silo, yeah.
Yeah.
But to think about it, like, because if you think about, not anybody can just sign up and say, I'm a manufacturer.
Right.
So certain things, it's going to be slightly more restrictive. But something like, I'm a designer, different thing. So for each one, we're trying to look at how we're going to make sure that it's a good fit for that group, but also that it shows that it's leveling the playing field. And one of those things is we've also looked into how we restructure the board in those instances where we would have representation from each of the different groups. So it would be 6 different adventuring parties, and each adventuring party would get 2 representatives.
I love it. This is change. This is like active movement. Correct.
So, well, it's not yet because it has to be voted on. So, and the current constituents, as it were, are all publishers. So I know that there's going to be a lot of conversation and concern from the current voters because this is a big shift. And so, if you are a publisher and you want to talk about it, I would love to hear about it. If you are somebody who is not a publisher who would like to be a full member of Gamma and what that would entail, I'd love to hear from you. I'd love to have people having a conversation. This is why we put out this announcement now before there's a vote, so there is conversation and we can see what the general ideas, feelings, concerns, and also, excitement will be. I think it's time for this. I think it is beyond time for this. I think that there are there will be some growing pains, but I also think that we're having a one-sided conversation as publishers, and that to be a better organization, we actually need to all hear all sides. And I say this now, I'm also going to be listening to like a lot of different viewpoints and not always agreeing with them. And I understand that that's going to be the case at some point, but I think that we can only get better by listening to each other more effectively. And that's what Gamma needs to do. So that's what we're moving towards, or trying to. We'll see how that works. We'll see what happens when it comes time to vote on it. But in the meantime, if nobody talks about it, that's right. I'm going to need to hear the feedback to know whether or not this is what our
Julie has nothing going on today, so just flood her inbox.
Right. I'm not running Shucks and a Kickstarter. 2 pledge managers right now. It's fine.
That's all right. Cool. I can play secretary. You just let me know, and I'll just pass it along when I feel like she can breathe. Right. I had a great comment here from Glenn to kind of address how Forbidden Games, it sounds like, has dealt with this Brexit issue. I'm interested to think about how that is affecting logistics firms like Spiral Galaxy, which, has a great relationship with many publishers in the industry. And so there we go.
Spiral Galaxy, Games Quest.
Yeah.
There's a couple in the UK, and it's, of course, there are some great logistics partners in France and Poland, Germany. So it's just so many good. We're going to see how it shifts and evolves.
Awesome. And Alan here, he said that he was active in Gamma years ago when he was self-publishing, and he'd like to be active but had no place. So this is really good news that he's going to have a different way to interact. You could always be a communicating member, but that doesn't necessarily really address the way that you want to interact with the community. And
I also like to add, the one other thing that we added as an addendum is, so there are people who aren't necessarily, there's a couple different facets to it that I would like to do, but like we're doing broad strokes right now.
Right.
But one thing in the broad strokes is, so you would be one of those, you would either be a full member and you'd be in one of those 6 adventuring parties. Or you could be a communicating member, which would be a much lower price point, and basically it would get you the emails and access to the education. So if you're just wanting to test it out, or if you're somebody who's not necessarily let's say you're a lawyer who does some stuff for the board game community, and that's not enough to be a full member. But you want to know what's happening in the community. You could be a communicating member and kind of be a more informed about what's happening. Or maybe you're just a super fan who loves being on the inside track of the board game community, and
I know those too.
Right. You could so that would be something where you still get access to the educational tools, and you get the newsletter. So that would be the one other tier that would exist.
Yes. So, and then Matt Paquette, he just said that he's a communicating member, but as a service provider, he's trying to understand how he would fit in as a full member.
Well, and that's true because Matt, you do so much service provider. You're like, call you like a wizard, the wizard,
or like lifeblood. I would, yes.
But I agree. It's something that you don't have to. And that's the great thing about it is you would be able to choose whether you think that that's something that you would want to do, and whether it would have value to you. So, of course, the other conversation that is always ongoing on the Gamma board is how do we make sure that we're providing value to our membership? That is an excellent point. And what are we doing? And of course, all of that has also had to ship very quickly right now because everything has had to go from, the primary thing was the conventions, the Gamma and Origins. And now we're shifting to what other services can we provide that have value that also can add, money going towards the foundation, the membership itself. It's been interesting. It's been an interesting time to jump on and be a board member.
Yeehaw, man, into the fire, and we love you.
It was, exciting times. May you live in exciting times.
What? Who did that?
That's not a blessing.
Okay. Well, we're going to remind everybody that if you don't want to miss us, because we're doing this craziness every Friday morning at 10:30, and you can click the 3 dots in the upper right-hand corner of this screen, and you can choose to be notified every time that we go live. We're also going to have a link to our YouTube account in the description box below so that you can subscribe and find all of our archived shows after streaming.
Yeah.
So we're moving on to our audience question that we had this week. And that was, how do you make the most of cons, both in person and now virtually? We're going to really kind of focus on the virtual piece so that we can get through and get you guys back to work. But I loved that there was a lot of different, I love con tips in general. I just think it's fun to be able to get good at what you do and be able to have fun doing it. And we are going to discuss virtual conventions.
We are.
Love them, hate them, what? I don't know. That's kind of where I'm at right now with it. So I will let, I know that you were going to go second, but I'm going to go ahead and set up our little layout here, and I'll let you start. You want to go with your beginnings?
Yeah, sure.
Do it.
So anybody who knows me, which is I'm pretty sure everybody in the audience, thanks guys, knows that I have historically gone to many, many, many conventions. That most of my life up until February of this year was spent on the road. And it has been a massive shift. So maximizing beforehand and maximizing your money, time, energy spent now are 2 totally different things. And everybody has had to make that shift. Everybody. What I'm finding interesting is that as publishers or content creators, anybody who is working at conventions, so is now getting far more savvy because we've been forced to continue to go to conventions. So, starting with leading up to Gen Con online, going through to currently Shucks is has started, and I will be jumping right from this to my booth afterwards. Has
Dressed in all your glory.
all day. We have gotten savvier. We have been forced to learn, so how to do virtual streaming, having Twitch channels, having Facebook Live, learning what the ins and outs, the pros and cons, how to maximize you when you're doing a video, how you can reuse it, how you can cut it, how you can market it, how you can take those snips and put them on your Instagram or your Facebook or Twitter. We have had to do all of that, and we've had to do it in record time.
Mm-hmm.
But now I'm starting to see a lot more savvy behavior from a lot of publishers because we've had to do it, and we've had to do it repeatedly. Here's the challenge. Each convention has to only do it once in a year. And so I'm seeing the same mistakes repeatedly because they are saying, well, they have a lot of moving parts, more than I do for a board game company, but they have to do it one time, and they're looking what has already been done and copying it. And so you're just seeing the same. Nobody's doing a reflection of what went well, what went wrong before they make the adjustments. Now, they are starting to now, but those first couple months were brutal. They were brutal.
Mm-hmm.
So going through and taking a look. And of course, I'm going from the perspective of a publisher. I am not going as the perspective of a convention goer. I know plenty of people who have had amazing, wonderful times at all of these virtual conventions. I'm talking about as a publisher from that specific lens. And I fully understand that. So, Gen Con. What did they do well?
Mm-hmm.
They organized a massive convention that was still going to accommodate tens of thousands of people in a very quick time. To my knowledge, the big concern beforehand was they were going to, shut down and make Tabletop Simulator, Tabletopia, all of those platforms, that the influx, they worked to make sure that that wasn't going to be the case. They worked to make sure their streaming was clean. Getting the mass influx of people and still having them be able to play games and go from spot to spot and communicate for such a short period of time, I think they did well. What they didn't do well was promote their vendors in any way, shape, or form. They promoted themselves very well. They had that sphere for a hall that I think my favorite name for it was the fart cloud.
I love you.
I didn't call it that. I did once I saw it, but it was. I get it's like one of those, like, you do it all the time as a designer where you have a cool idea and then you actually put it down and you're like, this is not as cool as it was in my head. It was exactly that. You couldn't find people. You couldn't see their look. It was ridiculous. And there was no just here's a list of names and links, alphabetical order, way of finding publishers. Yeah. And it's not an actual physical space. So you don't actually need a map, or if you want to, just use your map from last year, since it was just inviting the people who had signed up. I feel like there was a much simpler way, and they wanted it to look cool and they wanted it to look innovative, and instead you couldn't find any publisher very easily unless you just typed in the name. That was frustrating. It was super frustrating.
I mean, I will say that it was really enjoyable after I finished my day of working the con to at 1 a.m. just wander through the expo hall. I felt like I was being naughty. I'm like, oh, look, I'm in the expo hall and it's 1 o'clock in the morning.
Right. They made it very accessible to play games, and I appreciated that. And I from the beginning, well, I'll talk about that. Let me get to that later. So What they weren't doing was helping sell games, and attending games for people is great. We can't keep attending conventions, real or virtual, if people don't actually purchase our products.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we do all of it so people can have a good time, but also so that they buy the games.
Right.
so that we can keep making the games. So there was nothing to lend itself to that. There was no way of an easy access. And they, you know, they did try to, and I will say that that's something that PSI is trying to be very savvy about doing bulk shipping. And because they are a consolidator, they kind of had the infrastructure to do it and have been lending themselves out. So that's something where it was PSI's first one. So again, it was not seamless. But as time has gone on, they've gotten better. So they're doing it for Shucks. And I feel like that piece of it has gotten better, where you can go shopping and put things in your cart and not have to pay until the end. And then shipping has been covered by PSI. Things like that. Or there's been some, well, I shouldn't say covered by PSI. It's covered internally and you don't have to worry about shipping. PSI has done all of the who's paying for what shipping and how much and all of the discounts and everything internally. They're doing all of the logistics and numbers for that with the agreements for people. So they've gotten better at that. And Gen Con was the first one for that. But still, there was no way to say, here's a demo and you've played my game. Now, would you like to buy it?
Mm-hmm.
Which is what you do. And, you know, that is part of the deal of going to a convention and doing an event or a demo. Mm-hmm. And most of the time you say, no, thank you, walk away. But sometimes you do. And if there's no way to say it, you just go, well, that was a lovely time. And you move on to the next thing. And that is great as a convention goer. And that is terrible as a publisher. So there was no good way to do that. And I have not seen any real change in that over time. That there has been no good translation, with the exception of Tabletop Gaming's from the UK's convention, which was literally just a marketing. They are a marketing firm. They market, you know, magazines and in digital, and they had their convention where you could watch a lot of live stuff and then go to booths, and everything was geared to, here's how you can buy it. Here's how you can watch it, and here's how you can buy it. So there was no actual live play. And that's the other extreme. So you're not having a meaningful exchange with other peers and everything. You're getting to watch some really cool content, and you're being asked to buy things, which they are first and foremost an advertising company, so that makes sense. But I feel like that's the other end of the extreme. So where's the happy medium? I'm hoping to find it at Shucks. We're gonna find out soon.
Right.
So that was my first. You know, there's so much more to it, and we could go so far in depth that I feel like I've been talking for a while now.
Sure, I will shush you. So hang on. I love that you have so much of that on lock because you are, you know what you need to do at a con, and you know what you can and can't do in these situations.
Right.
What I have really loved about the virtual cons is the accessibility to continuing education content, panels. I feel like, yes, we're all running around trying to do demos, but in a physical con, how many of us actually have time to learn? And because we've got amazing experts in the field that are being tapped to do panels, and the people who need to learn are us, and we never can get to them. And so I have been really enjoying and really focusing on that piece as something I could do to get through this. So panels, webinars, I really like how Zoom has a webinar module that you can use, and it's pretty fantastic. I felt like it allowed Q&As well. It had a lot of different things. And what I really realized after using Gen Con to run a panel is their only thing that they can offer us is access to their audience. They have their tickets. They have enough people who gave this a shot that they bought tickets and they tried. I don't know if we'll have that next year. So I don't know.
I will. I think that people
you
are
think they'll come back?
I do. And to your point, what they are giving you is access still to a larger audience.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, helping you herd that audience, which if you're
Right.
going to pay money, I feel like they should be doing. But what they can do is, because you have access in this virtual thing, they're giving you access to give them this, so virtual sharing information. And I feel like what I have noticed is I have a lot better results with Kickstarters and pledge managers than I
Okay.
ever did at any physical convention, because at physical conventions, there's a physical thing and you can get it and it's right in front of you and you want it.
Right.
Virtual convention, it's all about the presentation, and a Kickstarter is all about presentation. So I've had a great success on the Tales of Barbaria and Lost Ones during conventions, showing them and then saying, it's on Kickstarter right now. Here's the link. So my shift of focus has become going from here's a shiny box, don't you want the shiny box, to here's a shiny Kickstarter, don't you want the shiny Kickstarter?
Awesome.
And then the other thing I wanted to mention was Envoy's Gateway Gaming website that has just started this month, only like less than 2 weeks ago,
Mm-hmm.
so the links are in our thing, and they have, at its simplest form, it's a calendar, and you can go on and find a game and find people to play with and play that game. But as a search engine, you can search by date, you can search by publisher, you can search by what type of platform you want a game on, so Roll20, Tabletopia, Tabletop Simulator. You can see all the Kickstarters that their publishers, and of course they represent at least 50 different publishers, what Kickstarters they may be doing, what other special events they may be having, any giveaways they're doing, all on the calendar. And then also you go on and you sign up, and there's just how many players are needed. You can sign up for one that's just, I want to play a game, or you can sign up with one with a GM who will run you through, not necessarily like an RPG, just somebody to teach you how to play the game, a person, not a tutorial. So I will say that I think it's a weird thing, but it's like an ongoing convention at this point, and I think that might be the future for the next couple of years.
That's kind of what I was thinking. Like, we don't need these actual events at this point other than their audiences, because you can just do it whenever you want. Like the panels that I did for Gen Con, there was additional interest to go deeper on some of the topics, and I just started doing it once a month and trying to get that out so that people could hear about it. But I am missing the audience that I had at Gen Con, so it's not going to have as much of a reach. So that's something that I'm trying to build up. But you don't have to wait around for all of these things anymore. It's kind of just creating probably a more constant flow of content, whereas before we kind of we would plan releases around cons, or we would plan events around cons, whereas now that those don't exist, we kind of are just making it more consistent.
Yep.
So you talked to, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was just going to say a couple people that we talked to this week, because didn't want to hang out in a bubble asking, and we wanted to hear what everybody else is thinking. And I talked to Price from Cephalofair, and he hasn't really engaged. There's been no official presence for Cephalofair at any of the cons, and pretty much kept low profile. Some of the concerns that we talked about was trying to do a good job of demoing some of their products was difficult. They had enough on their plate with doing Target and straight to retail stuff, that they felt like they were able to do a better job focusing on that. How you do a little bit of everything.
You absolutely do.
Yeah, you do too much and everything suffers. But if you focus on something, you do it really well. And they're just at the beginning, and that may have changed by this time in the year now. The beginning, it was difficult, and a lot of people were just not giving good reports back. Like, it's hard to sell product.
And you're adjusting. You don't it's all new, and we're all so good at it, just adjusting to change since childhood, where you don't.
Right.
as soon as you can't do it perfectly, don't just throw it down and say, this was dumb. I didn't want to do it anyway. None of us do that.
That's right.
We had to
Otherwise, we
change
wouldn't be
Magic
here.
Pro. On the other hand, I talked to Kurt, and he, like me, has been going to quite a few and maximizing. So he also had Kickstarters. So he even more than me had more this experience of, he ran a ton of demos and games at Gen Con, and what he did to maximize it was, instead of having one person per table, having somebody come in and be like, and kind of stagger it and be like, okay, or I'm sorry, have a group of people and talk to them and be like, here's the rules, here's how you play it. Now go to your separate areas and play the game, and then just rotate to answer questions as they were going, so that he could maximize table space and getting enough people to play it. And then, of course, immediately as soon as the game was over, having that one person say, now here's the Kickstarter. So he really did focus on making sure that his demoers, they only had to learn one game. They had to know it inside and out, be able to explain it quite well so that somebody could play it independently. Right. And then translating it right to, please go to our Kickstarter, and had huge success with that. So it's how savvy are you, and how easily can you train your demo team?
Right. And Kurt actually hadn't been doing a whole lot. He'd been always straight to retail release, and
but he's been in sales his whole life. He was in the toy industry before. So it totally makes sense. And I love learning from him.
Right. And I love that he jumped in to Kickstarter and just killing it. I mean, man, it's so good. So we've been having really, really good conversations.
I know. I saw the one from Chris, though, who talked about Tiffany from Haba. Haba has crushed it. I'm not going to lie. I spend a lot of time looking to see what Tiffany's doing so that I can,
Yeah.
Take lessons and learn.
Right. And did I get that up there? Yes, I did. Yeah. So yeah, they are doing fantastic. One of the things that I noticed that we apparently managed to get Zayas up early, so he had some good stuff.
He did.
And what I love this question. The biggest, well, it's a statement. He has other questions, but the biggest impact that you've seen is that new worlds require new methods, and very, very few new blood are being injected this year compared to years past, because it's not an easy in because people are confused. It's historically,
but also you circle
thing.
You're not even talking to the people you generally talk to. We've all become much more closed off. So letting somebody who's brand new come in is even harder for them to make that connection, because there's no connection. It's much harder. I agree.
Right. And I think that's good to keep in mind. And then the other thing that he said, where did it go? Because he works with manufacturing.
Yep.
And I think that this is a good point. Where the crap here? Same for Long Pack. You think that it's difficult to be a publisher in online events, but there's zero infrastructure into online events for B2B.
Yeah.
I mean, a lot of people, you're going to meet other businesses, and there is virtually no mixers anymore. There's no planned ways to interact.
That was a huge discussion in the board meeting just yesterday, Daniel, about what can we do to get retailers and to pull in so that and if we're not going to be able to do quantity, how can we, because it's pared down, how can we make it more quality then, at least something? Right. So I agree with you 100%.
Yeah. There was one other Jeremy, where'd you go? He said, I feel like it's year zero. The lack of support and promotion for publishers will make it harder for publishers to buy into the future of the virtual cons. This may be our new normal, so fix it.
Yep.
That preach. Yes.
Right. Absolutely. And so I feel, media already was far more tech savvy, and I feel like we've had to be very reliant and suddenly realize how important media is if you didn't before.
Right.
Publishers themselves have come a long way very quickly as a whole. Conventions have not had to as fast. I will say one exception is, I'm not going to remember the platform now, but there's a platform that Dragon Con used they've done 900 conventions. So the platform itself, not the convention, but the platform has now hosted 900 conventions, and over the year has gotten very reflective and very savvy at adapting so that, and I'm going to have to find it and put it in the links because I'm not going to remember the name right now.
Sure.
Where the idea being that they're trying to do things like start to shape, like you make your booth and then that's your booth and you can make tweaks to it. But from convention to convention that uses their platform, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You don't have to start from scratch every time. You don't have to change the dimensions of your
images, your
deliverable and
assets.
images, right? It's already there. And then for the next convention, if you're like, well, I want to tweak this and I want to change this and I want to change this, that's you. But if you're like, hey, I made it pretty generic and there's like back-to-back conventions and that's what I'm doing for those 2 conventions, that's fine. To me, that's huge as a publisher, something like that lowers that. So now I don't have to focus on making images. I can focus on how am I reaching out to the community? How am I getting my demoers on board? How am I, like, all the other stuff? Mm-hmm. To me, that's a big improvement. Something small like that conventions aren't thinking of.
So our message to conventions is standardize. If you want us to be more involved and be able to sign on without a second glance and support your convention, give us standardized software that we don't have to make a brand new booth the night before.
And ways of encouraging sales. I'm sorry.
Exactly.
Reaching out to the community in a variety of ways.
Yes.
So.
Well, and Julie has a top tip.
My top tip, which I kind of already, I mean, it shouldn't be a surprise. Maximize your virtual sales.
Yep. Push those Kickstarters.
Mm-hmm.
And just, you said that you were going to do like just promo cards in your web store or promo codes in your web store for your physical inventory to move.
Correct.
Right. Well, mine is learn to grow. This is your moment that we are not as focused on the expo floor right now. And I think that especially since a lot of things are live streamed and able to be played at a later time, there's some good content going out in terms of continuing education and in the publisher arena. And I hope that you guys are taking advantage of that. So what? Oh man. I mean, there's just amazing comments this whole time. It's going to be great. But I want to push through to what is going on. Oh, shoot. I got to turn this off. What is going on with Miss Julie this week?
Oh, we got a Kickstarter. We've been talking about it for a couple of weeks, but yes, we were first day funded. So yay. We're working on stretch goals. We are going to be demoing all weekend at Shucks, and then I will be demoing. You can from Envoy's Gateway. I'm going to be scheduling demos there starting next week. So if you want to try and play it, feel free to sign up. If you want to go and look at the Kickstarter now, I won't be sad.
Please look at that. And
right.
We actually were talking because, I mean, this is the first time, and I also have a Kickstarter that is live right now, and for the Poketto collection. And we were talking about dollar nods. I don't know if everybody in our audience knows what I would refer to as a dollar nod, but basically there's a social aspect to Kickstarter that you have followers and people who watch what you're doing there. Like a lot of people will
just by virtue of you being in the industry.
Yeah, they're like, what are your recommendations? Right. Oh, it gives me an email when you back something. Maybe I would be interested. And I love to do $1 nods, like, because nobody knows if I'm buying it or if I'm doing the $1, but I love to do dollar nods too, as a sign of respect to my other publishers. I see you, you're working hard. I think that this is awesome and I wish you well. And having dollar nods is just like one of those warm fuzzies that we can do for each other in the industry. So, I mean, Julie and I both put our Kickstarter links down in the description box. We'd love a dollar nod because we try to do the same for you. And I just think that is a really good way to have goodwill in our industry. And it's kind of a nice thing. So did you have anything else to say about your? I want to
No,
know.
but I will say that somebody who is consistently supporting, shouting out, and raising awareness for his friends' Kickstarters is our shout out for the week.
Okay, but you gotta wait because I gotta finish saying my thing.
Okay, finish.
Do
your thing.
This is important. Tomorrow I'm doing something really cool, and I'm gonna do a panel because we were talking about the panels, and I've been doing this micro game panel with other publishers that make micro games, and tomorrow is going to be a really interesting conversation about micro games and Kickstarter and how it's different and how the different challenges can be and how you're going to adjust for those because it's just a different type of Kickstarter to work with. There's a lot less price points are lower. The amount of backers that you have to get are much higher. There's a lot of cool stuff, and we have a hugely experienced panel that I can't wait to hear all of their information. So I also have the links to. We're going to be doing it on YouTube Live, my Facebook Live, and on Twitch. And if you want to click over and hit a reminder on your preferred platform, that would be super cool. I can't wait to see
I might
you guys.
sneak away from my booth just to watch it for a little
Yay! All right, so you want to talk about this amazing person. Let me see.
So our shout out this week is to Jeremy Howard, the hardest working man in board game media. Jeremy is always working, and he's always thinking about how he can promote and be considerate to and improve our industry. He's thoughtful and an enthusiastic gamer. He'll go the extra mile to examine a game, seeking the viewpoint of the publisher and the consumer and the designer. And so from his start from Jambalaya's Plague's game until his joining the Man vs. Meeple crew, he's worked tirelessly to provide quality content, and he's also just the most delightful human.
He's lovely.
So that's our shout out.
Yes, and you can see where you can find him on Facebook, and he's on Instagram, where you can go follow his work. Jeremy is the man. And I am going to tell you guys what is coming up next week. Next week, we're going to do our favorite resources. We've got lots of different things to talk about. These are publisher resources, typically, maybe some Kickstarter resources, but really it's going to be different ways to connect in the community and things that have helped you. It's going to be one you don't want to miss.
So until then, thank you so much for hanging out with us.
You can follow us on Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, and Pinterest. And the links are all in the description box below.
Enjoy your Friday and your weekend. And remember, until next week, you're invited.